All righty. How's everybody doing? Yeah, it's cooling off out here. The wings hopefully are keeping you nice and warm. You know, it's a little chilly. I wish I would have planned on shorts, to be really honest with you guys. It's gonna be a little sweaty, but you know, in my mind it was cooler out here, but in reality that's just not the case. But hopefully the wings are good, the beer's good. I'm glad you guys are all here. Welcome. Thanks for coming out. Week 1 of Authentic Manhood. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, curious what you guys all did today. Okay, so raise your hand if you got in a good Sunday nap today. Anybody getting a good Sunday nap? See, if you, okay. So these are going to be the guys that are a little happier than the rest of us. All right. Raise your hand if you watched football today. Yeah, nice. Anybody golf today? Oh, man, I'm extra jealous of you guys. Okay, that would have been nice. Anybody do anything with your kids today? Yeah, good. Sundays are good for that. Okay, here's a good one. This will tell the temperature of your marriage. Anybody kiss your wife today? Bam, there it is. It's Authentic Manhood, so with tongue. Huh? Anybody? Come on, there it is, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. Hey, man, you're married. God said be fruitful, multiply. Says, once you're married, man, why not? It's good stuff. Well, again, welcome. Glad you guys are here. I'd love to know just the temperature of who's in the tent. I would say the room, but who's in the tent? So if you've ever done an Authentic Manhood before, raise your hand. You've ever done this before? Okay. And then if you were here with us in January, February, raise your hand. Okay, nice. Yeah. So not a lot of repeat customers, which is probably a bad sign since I led it in January and February. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Nice. Well, this is awesome. Well, I'm excited. We're going to have a great night together. We're going to go through this book. But first, I want you to get to know the guys at your table, okay? Because that's the most important part of this. You can listen to any idiot ramble up here, but the good stuff's going to happen around your table as you guys talk, okay? There'll be some questions that prompt some good discussion. And it's like anything. If you're looking across the table and you don't know more than one or two guys, it's going to take a little bit for camaraderie to develop, intimacy to develop, to share anything real. I get that. But I want to start off just about 6 minutes of just your story, okay? And here's the ground rules for it, because I think it's important. I've learned this. Oh, I forgot to do that. That would have been neat. Anyway, we'll do that later. Here's the ground rules. So everybody, I'd love if everybody would talk at your table. Again, there's only 5 or 6, 7 other guys. You don't have to. Nobody's going to get you in a headlock and give you a noogie if you don't talk. But I would love if each of you talk and just hit these questions. So a minute each guy at max. Where are you from? Are you married? Do you have kids? What do you do for fun? And then what did you want to be when you grew up? And here's my one rule, because here's what I found with men. It's when we introduce ourselves and meet new men, the first thing we talk about is, well, what do we do? So the one rule is you can't say what you do right now for a living, okay? Because I think what happens is we all look around the table and we start categorizing people, right? So don't share what you do for a living right now. Share anything else is fair game. I think it is a fun question. Who did you want to be when you were 12? I wanted to be a police officer when I was about 12. So anyway, you got about 6, 7 minutes. Once it looks like conversation's dying down, I'll jump back in. Converse. All right, how are we doing? Has everybody been introduced now? Dennis, did your table meet you? All right. Anybody else? If your table is I would beg for another minute because this guy hasn't been introduced, raise your hand. Everybody else good? Okay, I think we're good. Good. Good conversation going, right? This is good stuff. We'd love to know who thinks they have a guy at their table who grew up the furthest away from Cincinnati. Where's probably the furthest away? Okay, where did somebody grow up from over there, Patty? I can't hear you. What? Tucson, Arizona. Is anybody further away in their origin from Tucson, Arizona? Okay. David? The Philippines. Can anybody beat the Philippines? Bam. Way to drop the hammer, David. I like it. Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. Okay. Who thinks they have the most? Someone at your table had probably the most outrageous thing they wanted to be when they were 12. Not just I wanted to be a doctor or a postman or Robert, what was somebody at your table? Matt, you wanted to be an NBA player? Yeah. A little short for that, but you got the athleticism. Just the height is what got you. Man. Okay, so NBA player. Yeah. Anybody else? What's another funny? I wanted to be this when I was 12 at your table. I'll come back to you. What'd you say? You had 2 race car drivers who wanted to be race. Both of you, and you were sitting next to each other. Oh, you were a race car driver, Bill. Okay, and Jesse. Okay, dang. So race car drivers. All right. You can tell we were all very realistic when we were 12. Yeah. A Ghostbuster. I like it. I'm not sure that's a real job, but actually it probably is. There's definitely people that make money going into places and doing that. So, yeah. Anybody else? One more crazy one. Anything sticking out? Fair enough. All right. Well, good deal. Well, hey, so Authentic Manhood, in case, again, there's some guys, this is your first time here ever, or in case you've never had it explained to you, like basically we call it Authentic Manhood based just on the curriculum that we're doing. And we just bought this from some publisher. I don't know, you guys could find it quicker than me. But we've been doing it for a good, I don't know, John, 7, 8 years? And there's 6 volumes of Authentic Manhood. Okay, so if you ever hear about it, like I had a guy earlier, like a week ago, one of you in this room probably was like, well, hey, I don't need another book because I just did it in February, and I'm sure the book hasn't changed much. He was catching on. He's like, you guys like my $15, don't you? But no, like we haven't done this volume of Authentic Manhood since 2019 because of COVID. So if you're a part of Authentic Manhood every single year, you won't hit the same stuff for about 3 years-ish, maybe 3.5 years around the horn. So that's what it is. And the book, here's what I will tell you on the front end of this volume, this season, this time, is the book is it's a guide, it's a primer, we're going to use it, but we're not going to use it like exclusively, okay? So we will probably fill out about 30% of the blanks in here. So if you're a blank filler outer, you might be a little frustrated. The good news is that all of the answers are in the back, okay? Somebody told me that last session. I think Tim did. Thanks, Tim. Sorry if that ruins it for you. But here's the deal. I don't think we're all here giving up an hour of our night or more because we want to fill in some blanks, right? Like we all want to grow in some way. You know, I don't think it even matters where you are on this whole faith thing. I think just us as men, we want to grow and get better, become better husbands, better fathers, just better men in general if we're single. So I want to grow. I don't want to fill in blanks. So the thought is like we're going to skip some. We'll even change some words sometimes, okay, which is going to be like cumbersome because we'll be like, you'll be reading it and it will say one word and then I'm going to use another word over and over again and you're going to think like I can't read. But I can read. I went to Madeira, okay? So Madeira's pretty stellar education there. They taught me well. But we'll change words. So like this volume is actually called A Man and His Traps, okay? And it's not talking about weightlifting traps, okay? Sorry, I thought that was funny, Matt. I mean, somebody should have laughed at that. That was good. As John and I were talking about this, we're like, who's going to come out to talk about traps? Like, that sounds like fun, right? So we changed it to overcoming obstacles, because that's a positive spin on traps. And really in life, like, man, aren't we just constantly coming upon new obstacle after new obstacle after new obstacle, right? Especially as men. I have a friend this week who she was sharing with me. She's not a dude, but I think it applies well. And in the last week, she's divorced, and in the last week, her kids lived with her, and in the last week, she's had her son tell her he wanted to go live with his dad, so she's like dealing with that, okay? And then last night, they're babysitting dogs, and they have a guinea pig in their house, and she still has 3 little ones, okay? So she's got kids that are probably like, I don't know, I'll ballpark at 9, 7, and 5. The dog gets into the guinea pig cage and eats the guinea pig in front of all of her children. Okay, so they are screaming, crying. She spent 3 hours rubbing backs and trying to get little ones to settle down. Obstacles are everywhere, right? They mount up like crazy in our lives. I mean, they stack up like flapjacks in Gatlinburg, right? It's just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, especially in our modern world. It makes me think of a movie. Okay, so this one's going to go back. For some of you older guys like me, you'll enjoy this. For some of you younger guys, you should look it up. Okay, so Tom Hanks is one of my favorite actors. There's a movie called The Money Pit, where Tom and his wife are like starting out life, and they buy this old fixer-upper house, and it's beautiful, but it just needs a little work, okay? So let's see how a typical day goes for Tom in this movie. It might remind you of your life. Man, haven't you been there, right? Like, doesn't life do that to you sometimes, where it just stacks up, where one thing after another, after another, after another. Anyway, that's pretty funny. So I want you guys to spend another time in your group here, where I want you to share, what do you think the like top obstacles are that we face as men? Okay, and you probably have a variety at your table. You might have some single guys, like Andy. You might have some guys that are grandpas that have all kinds of kids. You've sired many children across the land. Okay, so you got a variety. But what are the obstacles that we're facing? And then you in particular. So talk generally first, if that feels safer. Like other guys face these obstacles. But then if you're brave enough, Thomas Wagner, then maybe share what obstacle are you facing right now. Okay, we'll go about 7 minutes. Okay, have at it. There'll be a timer on the screen. All right. Raise your hand if your table needs more time. Any table need more time? No? You guys good, Tim? You guys good? All righty. Cool. What are some examples that came out of the obstacles that you guys shared around your table? Anybody brave enough to yell one out? Yes. What's your name? Hi, Connor. What's one at your table? Sexual sin. Yeah, that's an obstacle. Just watch the news long enough, right? Yeah. Yes. Doug. Okay, and social media. Okay, how does that become an obstacle? True. / 48-year-olds can be struggling with watching too much Facebook, right? You're like, yeah, those are good. Not to you, Brad, Mr. Miller. Somebody else, what's another obstacle maybe you face as a man in your life? Right guy. I'll come back to you. What's that? Dating? Yeah. Finding that Mrs. Right. I gotcha. Okay, well, somebody over here. Yeah, for sure, right? Like there's not a great manual on that. It feels like if you're winning in one, it's hard to be winning in the other simultaneously often. Yeah. Giuliani, right? I like it. Hey, Juliana. Yeah, that's a big one. We're going to be hitting a little bit of that throughout our journey over the next 6 weeks, that there is that innate pressure we all feel as dudes to like engage a certain way when somebody dies in our family, or when somebody's struggling, or when we're sad, right? Last session when I pulled out the emotion wheel, like put up a big picture, and there's so many emotions, and it was like, okay, guys, there's more emotions than like hungry, horny, and sleepy, okay? Like that's like a messed up version of the Seven Dwarfs or something. There's a lot of emotions that we can feel, so that's good, Giuliani. Somebody else, what's other obstacles? Patrick. Anti-culture, is that what you said? Oh, gotcha. Okay. Sure. So that's an obstacle in itself, right? Like, say the wrong thing, even if it's not what you meant or you feel, but you word something incorrectly, you're in a certain field, right? I've seen your commercials on Facebook. He's a realtor if you need to sell anything. Just saying. You say the wrong thing on there, Patrick, you're in trouble. You get canceled. Yeah. Somebody else. Raj, Tom. Yes. Yeah, so the obstacle of like meaning and purpose, right? There's a reason there's the thing called a midlife crisis, right? Where you're like, I know, you guys are all young, fit, handsome. Okay, Benjamin is young, fit, and handsome. The rest of you guys are guys. Okay, over here. What's that, Jeff? Communication. How so? Expand. Calling you on it. Gotcha. Is this a Mrs.? Yeah. No, that's a great. I mean, that's a great example. All jokes aside, that's a great example that our origin family, the family we grow up in, how they handle conflict and drama is how we bring that into our marriages, right? So in my family, we just didn't handle it at all. We didn't talk about it whatsoever. We just stayed angry for a few days, and then after a few days, everything just sort of went back to normal, but then there's those wounds there. My wife came from a similar family, so that's fun at home because we both go that direction. But some of you guys probably came from a house where you're yelling was the appropriate response to conflict. Jeff? Yeah, yeah. So at least give some hand signals and stuff, right? Like, not that one, at least. Let's go maybe like one more obstacle that came up at your table. Anything we haven't hit yet? Yeah, back there, John Kirby. Being a single dad. Yeah, that would be an immense obstacle. Like being a co-parent is already a challenge, right? If you're in a marriage still, but being by yourself would be even harder. Um, yeah, these are great. So I think we're all like familiar with them, right? Like we're if we could pass the microphone around right now and you guys could share the obstacles that you're facing in your life, like it would take days, I'm sure, to actually get through if we were each vulnerable. So this isn't unfamiliar. We're all on the same page with it. As I think about obstacles, there's these external obstacles, right? Which some of the things that you guys shared are these external obstacles, right? Like a lot of times, external obstacles are people, that are annoying, or they're people we love, but sometimes they're annoying, or sometimes they're just people we don't like and they're annoying, right? They're just obstacles in our way of what we want. Sometimes there's events that are obstacles, right? Like a bankruptcy, a natural disaster. Like there's all kinds of things. There's a litany of external obstacles, and I think there's a litany of ways to learn how to deal with them, in modern thought. We're not really going to deal with any of that because I think you guys can find help for that elsewhere. Instead, what we're going to look at during this season of Authentic Manhood are the internal obstacles. And some of those you guys did bring up, around the tables, that those are coming up. That actually we have these obstacles inside of us that I would say are more dangerous than the external ones, to be quite honest. Because a lot of times we don't know that they're operating underneath the water, if you will. And we'll use a couple analogies to try to help make sense of that during our time today. But we're going to be looking at internal obstacles. And what we're going to see is that if we're brave enough to try to figure out what they are, the ones that we're facing, is that we can actually make a lot of headway in our life because we start to realize why we do what we do, okay? And that's kind of going to be the theme of tonight a little bit of what's going on below the surface. We're going to talk about icebergs. What's going on below the surface that impacts why I do what I do above the surface, okay? So if you open up your books, we're not going to fill in this blank, but I think this is a great quote to start heading a little deeper into the chapter. It says, you've got to be willing to pursue ruthless honesty in the company of trustworthy men. So this is talking about this idea of growing, right? Learning maybe what's going on below the surface that's impacting what's above the surface. Page 10, hopefully you guys find it there. Doesn't really matter because you're not filling in a blank, but might help to read it. And I read that and I say, yeah, but that's really hard to do in 5 weeks with a bunch of guys I just met around a table, right? Because let's be honest, we're men, so I don't think any of us are going to start pouring out our souls at our tables with a guy that you're what's your name again, David or Frank? It's David. It's okay. Hey, David. But here's what I encourage you with. Man, I swallowed a frog, my mom used to say. Here's what I would encourage you with is the word pursue. Right? Pursue means you're taking a step. Okay, that's my hope really for authentic manhood is not that any of us are going to be crawled up in a ball at our tables weeping, because that's probably a lot to ask. But what would it look like over the next 6 weeks, because we take a week off in the middle, to take a step towards that idea of ruthlessly being honest with some other guys in your life? Here's what I've discovered at the age of 48 is before February of last year when I started a men's group of my own, I had one guy in my life that I was ruthlessly honest with. One, and that was it. And for a lot of you guys, that's probably zero, and it was zero for me at different times too. So the hope of this isn't, again, we're not just trying to fill in blanks so you can go home and show your wife, I filled in all the blanks, honey. The hope is to help you connect with other men so that maybe, just maybe, what would it be like to have one or two men in your life that you can be ruthlessly honest with about what's going on? That's what we're digging towards here together. All right. Number 2 on page 10. There's no such thing in life. This is worded weird, so it's hard to read. There's no such thing as life apart from struggle and temptation. And here I know we're starting to get into some religiously sounding words like struggle and temptation. But think about, here's what I want you to think about, is that often in life there's things that we really want, but they're not good for us, right? If you've known me for more than a year, you've noticed maybe I've lost a little weight, okay, over the last year. So in January, when I started Authentic Manhood last time, this kind of journey started, where Becky and I both started doing Weight Watchers. It's a very masculine way to lose weight, right? There's no CrossFit, there's no nothing. It's just Weight Watchers. It's like me and Oprah losing weight together. But I've dropped 45 pounds, and what's happened, though, is I've learned that the things that I want aren't good for me often, right? So I want to veg out tonight when I get home and watch Netflix with my wife and eat a half a bag of Doritos, right? Because they're so good. They're salty, they're fatty, even the blue ones are good. Who's a blue Dorito guy over an orange Dorito guy? Anybody? You're my people. Okay, that's what I want, but I know it's not good for me, right? And I'm learning that, right? Because I want to live long enough to see grandkids. So I've got to learn that often what I want isn't really what's good for me. Well, that's kind of the wisdom that the Bible will give us and uses in this struggle that we're going to talk through. And we'll look at one Bible verse tonight, okay? So we're going super deep. It says, "For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do." So a couple things there, right? Sometimes that last line I want you to look at, keep you from doing the things you want to do. That I think I feel as a man too, right? There's things I know I want to do, but it's often hard to do them, right? I want to start working out. I want to start, saving this much money. I want to start taking my wife out on a date this much. I want to, a whole lot of wannas that I don't always get to. So I relate with that. But the flesh and the spirit, I know that's kind of, again, religious-y language, but think of the idea of the flesh is what I was just describing. It's that thing that in you that wants something, right? It just wants it for the sake of wanting it. And then the spirit, again, this is out of the Bible, so the Spirit's talking about God living in us, but the Spirit just think of as doing the right thing, the thing that actually is good for you. And what God's telling us here is that there's this battle. Actually, Paul is writing this. A guy's actually saying this, a dude is saying there's this battle inside of me between what I want and what my body craves and desires and what is good for me, right? And sometimes I win that battle, and sometimes I lose that battle, right? So that's what we're looking at over the course of these 6 weeks. We're going to look at these different internal obstacles, okay, that bubble up to the top into our actions. And if we don't realize what the root of them is, then we just keep thinking, why do I always yell at my wife when this happens? Or why do I always stare at that gal jogging, for 12 seconds and almost hit a mailbox? What's pushing these things to the top, or there's these things underneath that are just bubbling up. And if we don't recognize them and call them out for what they are, they have the power to destroy our lives, right? And you guys have seen that, probably in some of your friends, none of us. All right, so number 4 on page 11. So Authentic Manhood is primarily about a heart change. So that's what you're going to hear a lot about, especially from me. Is I think if I worked with high school students for about 28 years, and it's I could get them to modify their behavior through guilt, fear, shame, right? I could tell them all kinds of studies about STDs, and I could talk about how, hey, on your wedding day, Like all of the girls that you slept with are going to be behind you, fictitiously, and I could guilt people into like doing the right stuff. But we all know that like fear, shame, and guilt is a short-term motivator, right? A long-term motivator is love and change. So hopefully what happens through this and what I'm aiming for, why we're skipping blanks along the way, is like, man, I would love us to have heart change, right? Where maybe whatever these things are, which I'm building intrigue here that we're going to look at tonight, if you're able to call them out, there's 3 of them, and be like, man, this is the one that I think maybe I struggle with, then it will bubble up to your behavior where there'll be something that you'll put your finger on. You'll be like, man, this happens all the time at work. And man, a lot of times it's my fault, if I'm being honest. You'll see that maybe something else is going on deeper. So what are they? Here's what the language we're going to use is that we have 3 internal drives inside of us, okay? Control, significance, and comfort. The book calls them idols. If you see that in there, I'm changing the word to drives. You could also insert into their desires, motivations, and think of them like this, okay? Anybody in here know how to like build computers? Anybody in here way smarter than me? No computer builders? What the heck? All right, no nerds in here. All right, we need some nerds in here. So my understanding on a hard drive is that there's an operating system that lives on it, right? And it pushes everything that's happening on your laptop or your desktop. But when you open up Microsoft Word, you never think at all about what's on that hard drive, right? Like it is just pushing to the top. It never draws your attention. I couldn't tell you what type of hard drive is in this laptop. I could barely tell you any of the software that is on it. I just know how it operates above the water, okay? So that's the idea of what we're looking at here with these 3 words, which again are control, significance, and comfort, is that these are buried in us. Again, that verse we just looked at, flesh and the spirit, that these are buried in our flesh as men, that we long for these things, their desires, their drives, their motivations. And if we're not careful, if they're not kept in check, they begin to bubble up in negative ways. Because these are all good things too, right? Like it's good to have control, right? Like if you didn't have control in your family, you would probably lose your house. You would lose all kinds of, probably your wife. You would lose yourself, If you didn't have significance, like God wants us to have a life that matters and that, to make a difference in the world. And even comfort's good, right? Comfort's great. But here's the deal. Like when they begin to drive every decision, then unhealthy things come out of that. So here's what I want you to do in your groups. It'll take about 6-7 minutes. What do you think about these 3 drives? So again, they're in your book if you forgot them. Control, significance, comfort. Do you buy it? So maybe you're like, this is BS. Whoever came up with this authentic manhood stuff, like really the drives are A, Q, and T, right? These are the drives, not these ones. So I want you to kind of round table that. And then let's say you buy it, or at least buy 1 or 2. Is there one that you see most in your life that you're like, man, this is a drive that I struggle with, the desire or motivation? All right, you got about 6 or 7 minutes. All right, let's bring it back together. Good conversation. We're hearing good conversations around the table, which is good. Go to page 12 in your book. So I think the chapter ends with, to me, the most helpful information in the whole chapter to really understand, because I heard that at your table, which I think is accurate. It's kind of hard to understand if you don't define control, significance, comfort. Like, what does that really mean? Because those all sound kind of good at face value, but then why are you saying they're bad, Ryan? Well, at the end of the chapter, it gives us just some thoughts on them that if they become, again, the book would use the word idols or gods in our life. I would use the word drives, desires, motivations left unchecked. So go to the page 12, the drive of control. And will somebody read for me? It says the lie. And then there was way too much for me to put on a slide. So anybody mind standing up and reading it? I'll give you a microphone if you want. It's big time. I'll pay you in leftover chicken wings.
If I could just maintain influence or mastery over this situation, these people, my performance, my schedule, my income, or whatever, then I'll be okay, content, strong, and safe.
Thank you, Nelson. Give him a big hand. Big hand. right? Like that's the lie, right? That if we're in control, then I'll be safe, I'll be successful. Functional heaven is dominance, okay? Like if your core drive is control, then you're going to probably be a dominant personality in a lot of the relationships you're in. What's the biggest fear? What does it say for biggest fear? Instability or weakness. And then the ways that it can play out. Relentless pursuit of security and excessive pursuit of power. So hopefully that helps start making a little more sense of like, well, what could be bad about control? It's good to be in control. I need to be in control of my finances, my weight, my health, my relationships. Well, yeah, those are all good things. But when that becomes like a god in your life or a driver in your life that like outweighs everything else, then you probably have had bosses like this, have you not? Right? Where like it was domineering, where you're like, dude, you hired me for this job. Like, let me do my job. I don't need you like sitting on my lap while I'm filling out this spreadsheet. You know, like, ooh, like, so it's not good. And here's the analogy that I'll use kind of with you guys as we finish up, is it's an iceberg. And we'll look at significance and comfort in just a second. But just think of these drives as what are under the water of the iceberg in your life. And your actions, your thoughts, and your feelings are what, the world sees your actions. They don't see your thoughts or hear your thoughts. And then underneath your thoughts are really your feelings. That's what drives your thoughts. And then as you keep working down, really the bottom there, again, what the book's arguing, which I find in my life, is that there are these three core drives that we have, if they're left unchecked, are going to wreak havoc in our lives. And I would say probably each of us have one of them that's a little more dominant than the other. But let's look at the other two while we still have a little bit of time. The drive of significance. All right, well, somebody read the lie for me. Any other brave individual? Thomas Wagner. The first, I believe.
The lie. If this person, this social group, the colleagues in my profession, if they find me worthy of attention or love, if they acknowledge my value or greatness, as long as I'm not being disgraced before them, then I'll be worthy, important, and acceptable.
Thank you very much. That was good. That was good, Thomas. No round of applause for Thomas. Man. Sorry, I got all kinds of jokes, but I'm just going to leave them. I love the last two words. What were the last couple of words in that, Thomas? I don't have it in front of me, but they resonated. Worthy, important, acceptable, right? Like the drive for significance is more of like a drive for, am I important? Do other people think I'm successful? Right? Like it's the whole, we think everyone's thinking about us when really 99% of the world doesn't know who you are, doesn't know who I am, could care less, right? But we live our lives jumping through hoops, hoping to impress, And then, man, if you were here with us last season, if you blend in a father wound into that, man, because then you're looking for significance from your dad that maybe comes or doesn't come, right? Like, so these are deep waters, I get it. Functional heaven is receiving affirmation. So like just any affirmation is what we would long for. And you've probably, again, have encountered employees, coworkers that have this, right? Where they're always looking for affirmation, How did I do? How was that? Was that good? You go with that? Right? And you're like, hey, just chill, okay? It's good. If things needed to change, I would tell you they needed to change, right? Well, that's somebody that's struggling with this drive of significance. The biggest fear is humiliation. Any of you guys have a gigantic fear of doing what I'm doing right now? Standing up here and talking in front of people? Yeah, like that's the number one fear. There's the big joke out there. It's a Jerry Seinfeld joke that like more people are scared of public speaking than they are death. So most people would rather be the dead person in the coffin at their funeral than the person doing the eulogy. And what that is it's the humiliation. Like we don't like it. There was 2 or 3 years ago, Chad had COVID at Christmas. Okay, so literally Christmas Day or the day before, he like got COVID. It was still when it sort of mattered more, where you couldn't still do things. Now it's like, anyway, people still just show up for work with it. But he didn't. Okay, so Drew did all of the Christmas messages, and then I had to pick up Drew's bridging, which was like a 3-minute bridging. Okay, And you know how stuff is here at Horizon. You can't just stand there and read something, right? It's like you got to like own the stage, you know? And I had like done this, and there were 7 services in one day. It was like 6 or 7, okay? And and maybe some of you guys were there. It's like I was crushing it all day long, okay? Because it is like bam, bam, bam. You take an hour break for dinner, bam, bam. And we're down to the second to last service. And every other time I had looked at my notes, I'd practiced in between. But this time I was like, you know what? I got this. This is great. And I like come out on stage, kneel, and all the, people just got done singing. I'm handed a microphone. And I stand there. And cortisol is just flooding my brain. And I'm like, quite literally stood there for about 35 seconds. Okay, so like that's a freaking eternity to be on a stage in front of people. And that thought, let me tell you, plays in my head, man. Every time I'm about to do something like this, or I spoke last week in Exploring, I promise you, I have dreams about that, that we fear humiliation, ways it can play out. Reading glasses. Overwhelming need for approval or love, inordinate desire for recognition. And you think of that first one, overwhelming need for approval or love. Like that doesn't sound like something that the ladies are lining up to marry, right? Right? Like women don't want us to be like, hey, honey, is everything good? You good? You good? Right? You remember that high school boyfriend that was always like worried about everything? Like, do you still love me? Is it good? Right? Like, no, if this is like a idol in your life, a desire, a drive in your life, doesn't play out well. All right, we're finishing up here, people. I got 2 more minutes by my American Standard Time. The drive of comfort. What's the lie? I need a reader. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that. Todd would kill me. Todd is a scary sound guy. It's hard to hear over here.
If I can just maintain physical ease or relaxation, if life could just be laid back, if I can just keep away from stress or responsibility, if I can just experience some pleasure or enjoyment in the moment, then life will be more fulfilling, easy, fun, or thrilling.
Nice. You're easier to hear than me. I need a deep voice like Steve. All right. Well, okay, so I'm learning maybe we need to rotate the speakers. I don't know. We'll figure that out before next time, but hopefully you guys could hear. Could you guys hear anything on the outskirts? Have you just been staring at me like pleasantly? You guys are the most patient people on earth then. Okay. Thanks, Steve. So I forgot everything you just read because I was worried about the speaker, but it was good, right, people? So the lie, what's in there, David? What sticks out for you, the lie?
Pursuing fulfillment, ease, fun.
Life will be more fulfilling, easy. Easy is the word that sticks out to me. Like, don't we just crave easiness? Like, as dudes, like, man, I wish stuff just worked out. Like, I didn't have to do things. Like, my 14-year-old son, like, refuses to make a sandwich, you know? Like, he'll starve to death before he makes a sandwich. I'm literally like, dude, there is turkey and bread and pickles and mustard, and there's nothing to eat. Because he just craves easy. Like, I crave donuts. All right, the functional heaven is pleasure and ease. And fellas, this is where it was brought up earlier, but like sexual temptation and stuff like that, that's where that comes in. It's more, 99% of the time, it's way more about comforting ourselves and numbing ourselves than it is even about something sexual in the moment, right? Because we just want to check out. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to either eat this or I'm going to do something I shouldn't. It's comfort. Biggest fear is boredom or responsibility. The ways it can play out: avoid stress and responsibility and constant consumption. So if you ever run into one of those like 28-year-old man-childs, right, that refuse to grow up, they're still playing like, yeah. Not that video games are bad, because I play video games a little bit, and Drew plays some video games, but like, you know, if you're still 30 and you're playing 5 hours a day of video games, you don't have a job, and then maybe comfort is the driver that's going on in your life, is what I would argue. Okay, so as we finish today, because we're out of time, I just want you to think of this this iceberg, and for you, which of the 3 drives maybe do you resonates more with you? You know, like, do you think you crave comfort more in your life, your relationships, your job? Do you think you crave significance more? Like, people need to know that I'm important, I matter. Again, not bad until it goes to an extreme. Or do you think you crave control more? Like, I'll be good if I'm in control of this. Cool. Well, I'm going to pray for us, and then we'll be done. I do have, because I like visual analogies. I'm cheesy as all get out. So little pieces of ice. Maybe take one. If you're like me and you got a little cup at home, or you throw coins or golf tees or, you know, ball markers, maybe grab one of these, and then when you look at it, have it remind you of which one of those maybe resonates most for you, you know? So I'll have these up here. If you want one of those, you can come grab it too. Let me pray. God, thanks for these men. Thank you for chicken wings. Thank you for beer. Thank you for the gift of each other. Thank you for your word that gives us wisdom. I confess a lot of times there's things that I want that just aren't good for me. And sometimes I give into that desire, and sometimes I don't. And I just pray that you would help us to find these three things in you, that we would find our significance in you, we would find our comfort in you, that we would know that you are in control of our lives, so we don't have to pretend we are. So thanks for these guys. Give them great weeks. In your name, amen. All right, boys, we'll be together next week. Next week, we'll have Mazunte chips and salsa.